Hello and welcome to another night shift. My name is Yazil, and today we want to work on to save these settings we made last time. So we want to save if the window is shown or not. So for that we gonna use or need a new C# script, and we create a C# script, and I call it settings manager. So in the settings manager, we want to use new stuff, and for first, it doesn't depend on anything what Mono needs, so we don't need that. But we want to have it in our namespace. Oops. Namespace yazir.options, and we don't need these both, since it's not depends on monodevelop. We need two functions in that. That's for start, it's the function to save something. So we need a public static void oops static void, so there it is, and we call it save data. And as a parameter, we want to have something to save. So let's say it's a string test or whatever, and we want to have the file name. So it's string and underscore file name. So we need for that the using system, and we need to using system.io namespace. And of course, since we want to use the serialization, we need to using system runtime dot serialization dot formatters dot binary. So the Unity engine we don't really need, but well, we need that if we want to have a debug output, so just let it in there. So if we use these functions, we are only able to do or save strings. Since we don't know what we want to save yet, and maybe we want to use these functions later on again, we're gonna do something new, for you at least. I don't know, maybe you know that already, but we use generics. So I use a function or a thing where I can define on runtime what we gonna do here. So I define my generic type is T, and I give it here a T type, and I call it my options. So then we see and look if it's, or if the directory is there. Directory.exists. So if the directory exists. So since we could hardcode that here, but let's make a variable for that. So it's a private static, static, I guess in string, and I call it settings dir, and let's call it settings. So we just call that here settings dir. So if that settings or the directory is not existing, we want to do something, and we just say directory dot create directory, and of course the name, it's underscore settings dir. So now we are sure we have a directory, and the next what we want to do is we want to get a new formatter. So it's binary formatter, and I call it formatter, and we have to start him, so it's a new binary formatter, and then we need a file stream. There it is, file stream, and I call it save file. Save file is equal to file dot create, and now we have to import our settings dir, and since we don't have the backslash or the slash, we need to add the slash here, and then we have to call our file name. So we got our file opened, and now we have to serialize that. So we go for formatter dot serialize, and what we want to do serialize, or what we want to serialize, is our save file, and what where we want to save it, and what we want to save, and what we want to save is our my options. So, and then we want to close the save file, of course. Save file dot close, so it's not blocking any memory. So that's a simple way to save something. So for our second part, we want to load something. So it's in public, and I think we want to return t, but it's static, of course. Static t, that's what we want to return, and we call it load data, and of course we have to use the generic again, and we say string underscore file name. Do we need more here? Not in a moment. So, and well, in the thing we need, or in the loading stuff, we need, of course, again, the formatter. And so let's see, we could catch an error, so we're gonna try that. And of course catch. What we want to catch is file not found, I would guess. Oops. Catch file not found, exception E. So since we could use the same strategy here and on the end close our save file, but since we want to return something, we can't close that, because if we do that, we don't get the return value. So we have to do something different here. We're gonna using and let the system handle the closing. So we're gonna using file stream save file. Save file is equal to file.open, and then our parameters is the settings there, and of course the slash again. And the file name. And as an option we say file mode .open. So that's the using part, and we just want to return the stuff. So we want to return T formatter dot deserialize, and what we want to deserialize is our save file. So this function will be called. We're gonna try if everything works, and then we use the file stream, and when we use the file stream we just return the deserialized file stream, and then is the using closed, so the file is closed also. And now we catch our exception, so we're gonna, let's call it debug log. And what we want to do, say file not found, and we cause the exception message behind that. So let's see if that works, or if we got an error. So switch to Unity for a sec, and there we got an error, not all paths return a value. Okay, that's here. So we had to return null, I guess. So there we run into a problem. Since the first thing we want to do is load our data, and we don't have a file, that means we run into an error and have to wait or have to save it manually. So what we want to do here is stuff like use our function save data, and we have to get a T in there, and of course also in T, and underscore file name. So we can't do that here because we have to input new data, and for that we have to do stuff like let's see, it's t, and we got a new t, and it's equal to new t. So that means we can return here new t, and of course we can say here in the new t, but since we don't know what to do here is we have to define the generic or we have to define a generic construct, and that we do where t. So we define what's going to happen if we only have a t. We call new. So I can show you that, and we're going to make that this way. Save. We go to Unity, and the file. Of course, there is missing one of these. Back to Unity again. Wait for compile. So see, we get the message cannot create an instance of the variable t because there is not the program does not know what to do with new, and for that we implemented this construct, and if only t, then create a new one, and if we save that and go into Unity, the error should be gone, hopefully. Okay, that's my cam stuff, still working on that. So for testing that, we have to have a class. So we're gonna make a new C# script, and I call it UI. So in the UI, it doesn't come from mono behavior, but I want to have it in a namespace. Namespace yazil.options. And what we want to save at first is a boolean. So it's public, and it's a bool, and let's say it's chat on off, and we want to save public bool options on off. Let's go in our normal notation, which is on, off, on, off. So, and then we have to have a construct for when something is new and fill it with stuff. So it's public, and it's UI, and brackets, and it's chat on off equal to the chat should be on default, and options on off should be false. So you could do stuff like this to make sure, but we just have that there. So that is our class we want to save. And now we go into settings, and in our settings we of course have to have an public UI doesn't recognize my UI. Why not? So it recognized that now. So if you have something like that, sometimes it just helps to restart everything and it's working again. So it's a public UI, and I call it settings UI, and it's of course a new UI. So in our awake function, we want to have settings settings UI. Is equal to manager, to settings manager dot load data, and we want to have a T, and now you see where we use the T, it's in UI, and we want to or have to put in a file name and I call it settings.cnf. Oh no, config. Oh, CNF. So, and when we start that now, the name settings UI does not exist. Settings UI. So in our start function, we want to call the load data, and we want to load a class with the name UI. We build our UI, and in the UI there's chat options and chat on off and options on off. And if it's not exists, it will be built out of the UI function, these variables in there, and it's gonna save. So let's check that out. Save. So it's gone, and we're gonna start this. Of course we get the we are not connection error, but ours is not marked as serializable. Okay, that's okay. We just stop there and go into our UI and say it's serializable. System is missing. Using system. Serializable, so save that again. So we are here in our settings folder, and if we hit start, it says the file is not found, so there should be a new file. Let's go back to the folder, and we see we got a settings CNF file, and if we stop there, okay, and okay, we have to expand our settings a little bit more. So in the settings file, we have to make sure that the values here out of these settings, which we read into the variable settings UI, are used. And there's a little problem because we don't know yet when our windows are ready. So we just go into the start function, and no, at first let's make an enumerator. So enumerator, and I call it screen up, and in this things we just yield for, I say 1 second. We yield return new wait for seconds, and let's wait for 1 second. And then we could use these one, but since we change the variables in here, we just use these. So we go in and do this and go in for options window also. And then we just don't, oh, they're missing that. And we just want to do that. We want to use settings. Let's do this. Settings UI dot chat on off. And we want to do this also. String save, string file, string file, string file. And here we want to use settings. Let's do it the same way. Settings UI dot options on off. And do it here also. And of course we just can delete these now, since we don't need them any longer. So we have to call that, and we do that in the start function just to give it more space. So it's start coroutine, and it's called screen up. So in Awake we load our stuff, and in settings we start the coroutine screen up, and in the screen up we just wait 1 second for everything is loaded, and then we set our chat window and stuff which or to the variables or to the values which are in our file. So we save that and go here, and before that we just, oops, wrong window, we go into our Unity projects across client copy for this project, and assets, no, not assets, settings, and we delete that. So let's start that up. We get in file not found. Okay, that's in we go here, and you see the options window is hidden. So to check that, we stop that. Okay, if we want to be sure our informations are saved, we have to expand our thing here a little bit more, and we have to use the unapplication quit. So we go here and say private void on application quit. So if the application is clothing, we want to save our stuff. So we go into settings, settings manager dot save data, and what we want to save is an TUI, and it's our settings UI, and we want to have a file name. Do we want to have a file name? Yes, we want to, and that's just settings .cnf. Make sure it's spelled right. It is. So on application quit, we want to save our data. So we save that and we go into Unity and start up again. So the window is gone. So now we put it up and stop the application and start the application again. And the window is still there and doesn't disappear. So thank you for bearing with me. It was a long video. I hope you liked it. If you did, just leave a like or even hit the subscribe button. And thank you very much for tuning in, and see you soon. Two things I nearly forgot, and the one thing is thank you again, Terence, for pledging to my course at Patreon, and of course, happy night shift.